Yes, thank you to the ANCA and the Armenian Legal Center, and it's a pleasure for me to join Siranush and Jared on this panel. You know, we stand at a moment when the conscience of nations is being tested, not in the abstract, but in the very real lives of people whose survival hangs in the balance. You heard some of those stories from my co-panelists. Real people who are tortured and tormented, real people who are uprooted and displaced, real people who are actively being erased. Armenia has brought before the International Court cases that don't seek power or territory or vengeance, but something far more fundamental. The protection of life itself, the defense of dignity, and importantly, the recognition of truth. Armenia's state cases at the ICJ and the European Court of Human Rights are not academic filings, they're not gestures in diplomatic theater. They're urgent appeals demanding that the Armenian people not be erased by starvation, deportation, denial, or silence. Let's take the ICJ case, Armenia versus Azerbaijan, for example. It's brought under CERD, the Convention on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. But what is CERD? Let's think about this. Why does it matter? CERD was formulated for a very specific purpose. It is a stopgap measure to prevent genocide. That's what the convention does. It's to stop genocide before genocide takes place. It's a proactive measure to prevent genocide. That's the case brought by Armenia against Azerbaijan. And Armenia is winning those cases. Even today, key orders are in effect. Artsakh Armenians today must be allowed access in both directions in the Lachin corridor between Armenia and Artsakh to return to their homes. That's an effective order of the ICJ. Here's another one. Azerbaijan must stop the destruction of Armenian cultural heritage. Or here's another one. Azerbaijan must stop promoting and stoking Armenophobia, hatred against Armenians, from the highest levels of the Azerbaijani government. That's in the order. The ICJ noting that Armenophobia, that racial discrimination against Armenians, is coming from the highest levels of the Azerbaijani government. It is state policy. And let's think about this for a second. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of speaking here in the building again, and I spoke of a leader who in this century refers to Armenians as dogs, whose regime refers to Armenians as vermin, who issued actual postage stamps foretelling the extermination of Nagorno-Karabakh, who publicly vowed on social media videos he posted to burn away the aura of Armenians. We've seen the videos of Armenian letters being scraped away from church walls by President Aliyev himself. Churches declared as Albanian, altars destroyed, elders executed, boys slaughtered, prisoners tormented and paraded. You just heard how he holds and tortures Armenian hostages. Now, why in the world would Aliyev want the CERD case, the case that is a stopgap measure to prevent genocide, eliminated? Why? Azerbaijan wants these cases abandoned because it can't win them. Because the orders and rulings in the case will undermine its manufactured narrative. Because to force its narrative on the world, it cannot be named, sometimes by the unanimous vote of the ICJ, as a perpetrator, as the aggressor, as the destroyer, as the one who's wrong. But most importantly, Azerbaijan wants these cases, the case specifically about the ICJ as a stopgap measure preventing genocide, Azerbaijan wants that case eliminated because Azerbaijan is not done. And this is why the peace terms initialed in Washington that Jared mentioned are so dangerous. They don't solve the conflict. They enable the next step. This is an enabling treaty. It's inviting future aggression. It is rewarding conquest, and it's codifying the fruits of ethnic cleansing as peace. It's appeasement in the mold of Munich, a temporary calm purchased at the cost of emboldening an aggressor whose ambitions are not satisfied. They are only encouraged. Again, the International Court of Justice has already found that Armenophobia is promoted from the highest levels of the Azerbaijani government. There is no room left about intent. So for Baku, the cases must go. Now, there's a camp that claims that Armenia must be realistic, that the past is the past and we must move forward. And I get that. I mean, it sounds like it's something that makes sense. But the unfortunate reality is that I am being absolutely realistic. Realism is that there is genocidal intent. And in the face of genocidal, and realism in the face of genocidal intent is not clearing the way for genocide. That's not realism. Realism recognizes that impunity breeds aggression, that unpunished crimes invite repetition, and that without accountability, there will be no peace, whether just or stable. Now, we've seen this pattern elsewhere. Srebrenica, the Rohingyas, and we know the same calculus applies when atrocity is tolerated and rewarded. Yesterday, Azerbaijan starved, deported, and executed. Today, it eliminates every trace of the Armenians from the land. You know, it's not enough for Azerbaijan to eliminate the people, the 4,000-year presence of Artsakh Armenians from the land of Artsakh. That's not enough. The ground itself has to be cleared. The cemeteries are being unearthed. Some of the oldest churches in the world are being destroyed and cleared to the ground. It's not enough to get rid of the people for Aliyev. And the churches they can't get rid of, we'll just call those Albanian. This is the reality. And it's broadcast on President Aliyev's and the Azerbaijani government's own social media channels. And Azerbaijan, it's rewarded with corridors for integration, Section 907 waivers, summit invitations. The lesson the aggressor takes from that is simple. Atrocity pays. Genocide is welcomed. Genocide is being invited. The international cases are a ledger of the truth. Every pleading, every provisional order, every judgment entered writes the facts into history. And these lines matter for the record, for restitution, for dignity of survivors, and most importantly, they matter for the prevention of the next atrocity. But hey, let's remove the legal stopgap measure altogether. You know, by doing so, this peace has raised the cost of Armenia's own salvation. It's bid up the survival price. And this is really kind of the peculiar cognitive distortion of appeasement. We really want to believe that, you know, if you just give that bully your lunch sandwich on Monday, it's going to stop. We know that doesn't work that way. You invite him for Tuesday and Wednesday. You feed it. You embolden it. You are part of the problem when you appease. And eventually, we end up where we are today. The absolutely absurd. Imagine, to get a just and durable peace, Armenia is being called to eliminate the decisions of the International Court of Justice. We have to get rid of the impartial decision of 15 jurists in opinions, a large majority of which are 13-2, 14-1, and 15-0 in favor of Armenia. We have to get rid of the justice in order to get a just and durable peace. We have to ignore the hostages. We have to pretend they're not there. We have to ignore the basic human right of return to your homeland. A peace treaty should be incorporating and integrating the decisions of the International Court of Justice, the truth, the law. That's how you get an agreement that conforms to justice. The withdrawal of Armenia's cases turns that principle flat on its head. It converts the law, justice, into an obstacle. Accountability into some bargaining chip, and justice into some sort of inconvenience. Justice is being showcased as an obstacle to peace. And I think this is why our work matters. We have to bridge the absurdity. We have to bring the cases that Azerbaijan now can't strong-arm the Armenian state to remove. And we have. There are corporate accountability actions against international multinational corporations who are aiding and abetting and profiting from Azerbaijan's taking and destruction of Artsakh. There are individual cases brought on behalf of the Artsakh Armenians against Azerbaijan, against companies, and you've heard of much of the good work that both Siranush and Jared are doing. And this is why the advocacy that's being done right here for the release of the 23 hostages and advocating for the right of return of Artsakh Armenians to their homes in security and dignity matters so much. Your work actually matters. Because what you're doing are obstacles to the horrendous atrocities that are literally right around the corner. Azerbaijan is not done. The taking of Artsakh was the beginning, not the end, of a process. And Azerbaijan has been green-lighted. The work you do here can change that. Demanding the right to the release of the hostages and demanding the right of return for Artsakh Armenians is a roadblock to those plans. It's a message to Aliyev that his campaign for the destruction of the Armenian state and the Armenian people cannot proceed like some sick, depraved sport. The work you do matters, and we will work with you in partnership to make sure that that work gets done. Thank you.